Cool. Here we go. Welcome back to another episode 8, I believe, for Anytime is Good. No one's actually ever asked me, and Stephen, I'm going to introduce you, but no one's ever asked me. I just realized why it's called Anytime is Good. Even if you do ask me, I'm not going to respond. I'm just
Okay. Well,
pointing
there
it
you
out.
go.
Well, I mean,
There you go.
you can try. You might get my guard down later, but
Okay, I'll have
welcome
to
back to
sneak it in
another
somewhere along the way. Yeah.
Sneak It In.
Okay.
I am here with you, Pastor Jeff, and I am joined today with one of my seminary colleagues and friends and muses, if you will, Pastor Stephen Bond. And he's coming at us from a city named after a state that borders Ohio on one side, in a state that borders Ohio on the other side. The real question is, Stephen, so he's coming to us from somewhere around Indiana, Pennsylvania.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Is there a Pennsylvania, Indiana? That's not one of the questions, but this is what I'm wondering now.
It's a fantastic question, and I will have to do more research about Indiana, the state's geography, to find out. It seems to me, having lived in Pennsylvania now for a decade and a half, that Pennsylvania is a state so large with so many municipalities. At some point, they just started throwing darts at a dartboard for names, because there's a California, Pennsylvania. There's a town called 84, Pennsylvania. So at some point they were just number them. So
everybody else was like, wait, nobody else is going to do that. We just did the 84.
We had a deal.
Yeah,
it's weird if it's just one town as a number. Yeah.
That's where you can travel and tell people you're from 84 Pennsylvania. They're not believing you.
Right. Yes.
You're not passing any kind of background check anywhere. So
yeah.
So that's great. So I'm thrilled to have Stephen here with me. We are going to handle only the most serious, only the most pressing questions, topics. If you watch one of these videos and you do not come away with your mind blown, your worldview shaken, then rewind it, watch it again, because it just means you missed something. All right. And if you stay tuned throughout the end of this video, at the end of the video, Stephen is going to go over with us. He has a side business where he does acupuncture on dolls. Right. So it's like for kids dolls that are stressed.
And so somehow voodoo is involved as well. Yeah. Uh-huh.
There's a little, I mean, yeah. You do what you got to do to make it work. All right.
Sure.
There's no judgment.
It's all about making things holier.
Yeah, there's no judgment.
Puncture with little holes. Yeah, dolls made holy. That's right. That's it. Yep.
Made. Oh, that was so good.
Sorry.
You flipped that one past me, and that was fantastic. All right.
Hey, why is this show called Anytime is Good?
Next time.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
All right. So you are on ex cathedra that'll pop up. It sounds a lot more authoritative and dangerous than it is.
Yeah, and much more glorified than I'm sitting in the old office chair with ripped upholstery that has sat in the church office for like 30 years. Yeah, ex cathedra makes it sound like it's a very nice chair.
Yeah. Your ex cathedra smells like so many other people that have been there before you, and you know what? That's the communion of saints. That's
what that is. That's the prayer rising up like incense. Yeah.
Marty Haugen had it so right. So
yeah.
All right. So question number 1, get your thinking cap. You serve 2 congregations.
That's true. Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. You serve 2 congregations. Can you give the origin of that, like why you serve 2 congregations, and if you've always done that right out of seminary, or is it later development? And then can you express to the people that are watching that don't necessarily associate a pastor with serving 2 congregations, like what is that like?
Yeah. Okay. So short version of the history, in the county where I live and serve, Indiana County, where Indiana, Pennsylvania is located, home of Jimmy Stewart. There's a long history of Lutheran churches having sort of multi-point arrangements because there's a lot of smaller communities, smaller parishes, and one of the ways they attempted to offer pastoral leadership, like over decades past, was almost like borrowing the old Methodist circuit rider sort of thing. There in the history of this area, there were like 6 points that were served by a pastor and an intern. So honestly, the congregations that I serve have memories of, man, we're great that he just has 2 places to be on a Sunday morning. The 2 congregations that I serve are each actually the product of mergers of congregations. The one up in the north I serve had been 3 congregations that came together, worshipped for a while in one of their buildings that did not have indoor plumbing. So when I first came, it was the bishop said it is one of the nicest outhouses on the territory of the synod, but he qualified it. It wasn't the largest because there was another church with an outhouse that was wheelchair accessible, so it had a larger footprint. So
it's important people to know you are 138 years old, though. Right? So
exactly, and I yell at kids to get off my lawn nonstop. Yeah. So yeah,
you're saying like joke, late 90s.
I'm saying until about 2009, we had an outhouse, and we built a new building up there in the time that I've been here, and
put another outhouse in. No indoor plumbing.
It turns out we went full 20th century in the 21st century. Yeah. So yeah, we got water fountains and classrooms and locking doors and all that kind of stuff. So that's the other congregation, two previous predecessor congregations merged. They both already had indoor plumbing, but merged. So yeah, the congregations, people who have roots in the congregations going back that far, remember 2 people, and a pastor and an intern rotating among 6 points, and lots of arrangements like that. I guess the other part of your question is, what is it like? It's funny because I have served in these congregations both before having children, and now we have a son and a daughter who are a year and a half apart, and in some ways are very, very similar, but also are very different. You know, it's son and a daughter, different interests, that kind of stuff. And so it's almost like serving in these congregations has taught me how to parent 2 different children, and then vice versa, because there are ways where both of these congregations in some ways can be very similar. They both know the experience of small town Western Pennsylvania 21st century Lutheranism, but there are other ways that they're different. One, because it is literally out in a field, recently having had an outhouse. There's no neighborhood, so there's no sense of, let's put up a display or stand on the street corner and invite folks. No, you got to know how to get here. We had a visitor one time come to an Ash Wednesday service up there, and he said afterwards, I don't know how God finds his building on Sundays. And like, there's a certain amount of, our outreach has to be person to person. You cannot rely on a sign or anything to get people here. Someone has to say, this is important enough, you should come. And the other church is right on a main street in town, catty cornered with the city hall and police office, and the highways block away the other direction, where it's a smallish town, but we're visible, and so it changes those dynamics. So just like learning context, I think the one last thing I'd say about it is I have had to learn for myself a certain amount of humility of what works in one place doesn't necessarily work in the other place, and that it's much less that there's a one right way to do things. I think sometimes coming out of seminary, there were times where like there was the unspoken, here's the right way to do things in a Lutheran church in the 21st century. You will do them in your context this way because this is the right way, and your job is to get a congregation to do things the right way. And instead, it's like, actually, there might be context reasons why it works here and it doesn't work here, or even a time factor. It works in this season, and then there's going to be a time when it doesn't work, and being okay with that rather than making each church do things the same way.
You survived question number 1.
Okay.
We now realized you were spoiled with indoor plumbing.
Yeah, man.
With only having to serve 2 churches.
Yeah, I know.
All right. So let's back off the high horse here. All right. And act like everybody's as cool as you. Yes.
Yep.
Question number 2, your call story, your sense of call to ministry.
Yeah.
Was it something that God just hit you with a lightning bolt one day on a rainy day, and you said, I was going to be a lawyer, but now I'm not, that kind of thing? Or was it a drawn out process with just affirmations till it eventually built up and you said, this is what I have to do?
Yeah, well, I'll say this as longtime viewer, first time interviewee on this show here. I find that the paradox of both, and as I've heard others say, is kind of where my story is. There was a moment it was probably 7th or 8th grade. I think it was when I was going through confirmation. And for the first time in my life, like had this deepening sense of, yeah, God might be calling me to just as a human, not vocationally, but just like, how do I live my response back to God who said yes to me, and claiming this faith as my own. And it was around that time that I first started answering questions when people would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Going, I might feel called to go into ministry. And I can remember sort of a distinct moment where like, that's the first time I've really thought about this as a reality. Then as I got through college and seminary, had the opportunity in congregations I was connected with, and then obviously in teaching parish situations, to get involved in new and different roles. And I felt like at each one of those points, this was one of those, well, if this feels like it's something that, connects, that will be confirmation of this is something to pursue. And if it turns out, oh no, it turns out I hate being around people, then probably not a thing to do, right? This is a thing that I feel like I need to be part of, or I'm being drawn to.
All right. Question number 3, back to your humbling parts, which sounds kind of creepy I don't like when I say parts out loud. All right, but I get it. Question number 3. So from the outside looking in, so for my people who are just going to be are getting to meet you through this, they don't know this, but for any of your people, they know this. It seems like you do, 2 congregations aside, let's put that on the back burner. It seems like you do 8 million different creative things. You have a blog, you're at a podcast, you're always releasing new videos on Facebook, you're like a puppet ministry. Then it's like every time I look, I'm like, man, Steve's put out another thing to connect with people. So is that something that for you, based on your personality, that you just have to do? It's just who you are? Or is it something that you started in the past and you don't know how to get off? Like there's no off ramp and you're like, please, Lord, show me how to stop one of these things.
So each of these different pieces that are part of my regular rhythm, I think have come about in different ways. Daily devotions that go up on the blog post for me are like a spiritual exercise that almost like, even if nobody else read it, it feels like I need that discipline of having like, okay, what am I going to do that keeps me honest so that I'm not telling everybody else, you should spend time in the scriptures. But meanwhile, I will only do it for the one text a week that I'm going to have to give a sermon on. That can be one more project that I can polish up and get a gold star for.
Right.
And then some of the other pieces, honestly, are things that have emerged for us in the midst of COVID and the pandemic, and where it was like, okay, there was a whole time where we weren't getting together face to face in any way, and then where we were getting together, but it was awfully limited. And so that felt like other kind of video messages or things like that was a way of offering connections to people that felt like it grew out of COVID. And it feels to me like it's kind of sad that it took something like a worldwide pandemic to get us to, okay, try something new. But again, I think that's part of where some of those things have come along with. At least I want to be a familiar weirdo, is I guess what I'm saying.
I want to know the weirdo's name.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I want to be on a first name basis as a weirdo with other people. We've looked for different ways for me to at least have a presence, to be involved. Again, it's time that you spend with people shows that they matter to you. It's that old Zadie Smith line, time is how you spend your love. So you were just telling me why it's called Any Time Is Good. You were just about to get there.
It's called, it was so close. It was so close. Question number 4. We are at the halfway point. Do you have a favorite Bible story or a favorite Bible passage?
One story that keeps coming back to me and both comforting and jabbing me in the side at the same time is the story Jesus tells in Matthew 20 of the laborers in the vineyard who end up being paid from last to first and all getting paid the same amount in the end. And the people who worked longer are upset because they thought they should get paid more. And the landowner says back, aren't I allowed to do what I want with what's mine? Or are you envious because I'm generous? What I love about that, and that again confounds me, is that on the one hand, that's very, very much to me a story about grace, about everybody gets to feed their families. And like in a culture where this is, you're a day laborer, and if you don't work for the day, you don't get paid to feed your family tomorrow. And we're not talking about any of these being millionaires. This is a minimum wage so that you could then feed your family, assuming all these people have mouths to feed. That there's this deep understanding of grace means everybody should be able to feed their family, and that the landowner understands a sense of generosity. It's okay to be motivated by generosity. And at the same time, it's a story about justice. And I think that it honestly took me till seminary when reading that story in the Greek, and it was like, oh my goodness, it's the word for what's just or what's right is what, the landowner says, this, the people who are hired later, I'll pay you whatever is right, whatever is just, that whatever justice looks like, it's everybody gets to eat in the reign of God. And for me, this story is like, how like physicists talk about wanting one day to find a theory of everything that brings together string theory and Einstein and all the like, and discover, wow, all the forces really are one. For me, it feels like somehow a story like this points to a theory of everything, that grace and justice aren't opposites, but somehow are, I don't know whether to say two sides of the same coin or two dimensions of the goodness of God. Maybe in the end they are one and the same. I still don't quite know how to wrap my head around, like it's this living, moving tension kind of thing, but I love that and am poked by it at the same time.
Question number 5. My experience is many of us go to seminary and we have these, if we're being honest, grandiose visions of how God is going to use us and how we're going to change the world.
Okay.
My experience has been most pastors along the way kind of lose that. We whether for a variety of reasons or experiences, we kind of lose that, and then we dial back. These are the expectations, like what can I really expect? From what I've seen with all the different creative things you do, it seems like somehow you didn't lose that. And this truly, for anybody who's still watching this truly it inspires me. If the church can't be a place where the ideals of faith are promoted and discussed and the things we strive for, then where can the ideals of faith go? So it seems as if you've been able to hold on to that, we can make this world a better place. And that's something that I aspire to. Is that something you even recognize in yourself? Is it something you're conscious of or you work on? Or
that's a really good question. I guess I'd say I wouldn't have said that I perceive either energy out of myself. I've met myself early in the morning when I'm dragging my feet to put on a pot of coffee. I guess I would say there are definitely times of jadedness or feel like maybe feelings of futility or feelings of like what kind of difference are we making? And I think maybe I feel like if there's something that's helped to inoculate me in the midst of that, is instead of pretending that I thought the world was going to be changed by what I happen to do in any given moment, I think it's almost the opposite. It's like trying to say, I have no idea what kind of impact I will or won't make in the world or anybody else's life, but I have this moment to do something with, and to do something rather than nothing seems like that's what the calling is. Do something with this moment, being willing to in this moment do something that's worth it, and then to go to bed tired with a good kind of tired of like, yep, you spent your day well.
And it's almost as if, leading into question 6, it's almost as if you had these questions beforehand. And I assure everybody, Stephen did not have these questions ahead of time. Question 6 really is a serendipitous segue. This is your last Sunday, and it's going to be your last Sunday on earth. The last sermon you're ever preaching.
Nice. Yeah. Like, way to go, serendipity / Holy Spirit. Yeah. And so this is also going to sound a little bit like a liturgical cop-out, because there's a piece of me that's like, well, what would be up on the lectionary? I don't want to make a big fuss about myself, just what would come up in the lectionary. When I've seen other colleagues in our community, like either leave to go to other calls or retire or whatever, and they've talked about like what they're going to do as their last message, in the back of my mind, every time I hear these conversations, like, well, I'm a lectionary preacher. I do whatever the lectionary says to do. I mean, like, they've come to hear the big story, not my personal story. Who am I? But that said, as we are recording, coming Sunday is this beautiful and vulnerable moment from Jesus where he looks out on the city of Jerusalem and says, how often I would have gathered you to myself like a hen gathers her brood, and you wouldn't let me. And it's striking to me as an image both of vulnerability, of like the God who's willing to be rejected and bear that. And like that's, I think, a huge thing about God's love, that instead of God being the toughest, biggest, strongest thing on the block who punches you if you step out of line, that God's willing to let God's own heart be broken in Jesus, as well as, throughout the scriptures, you discover, right, oh my goodness, here's this God who is vulnerable and woundable all over the place. We just didn't see it until we had Jesus-shaped lenses on. But also that image of being held in this beautifully maternal and barnyardy kind of image of God as mother hen gathering and the notion of the mother hen gathering her chicks to protect them, presumably from either a predator so that she gets eaten or fire or something like that. We have up on the hill with the church that used to have an outhouse.
Yeah.
One of my new favorite features in absence of a lieu of an outhouse is after we built the new building and have a big gravel parking lot in the springtime, right about this time of year, every year a killdeer makes their nest up on that hill. And I did not know about killdeer before until.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this has become like this is like God getting through to me. This beautiful, for me, it's become like this beautiful Christ image of the mama killdeer who does the injured wing thing and to lure the predators away. And will try and make the predator go after her so that the eggs are kept safe. And like Mama Chicken does something similar, just, okay, I'll gather you in my wings. The fire will, hurt me, but you'll be kept safe. Or the fox will eat me, but you'll be kept safe. And that beautiful image of being held seems to me like that's a decent place to talk about what grace is. And even that's not a bad atonement theology too, that it requires less divine accounting or God needing a certain amount of wrath or something. It's God who says, okay, I'll put myself between the danger and you, whatever the danger is, and I will hold you. So that maybe what it is to have faith is to let yourself be held. That feels like those are decent words to leave anybody with, is that the most we do in this life is to let ourselves be held and invite other people to let themselves be held by God as well.
Steve, you've done well.
I'm glad to hear. Thank you.
I'm not gonna say that you did better than I expected or that the people thought you could, but I'm not gonna say the opposite of that either. But truly, the reason for this interview, not just today, but for any time is good, that even exists, is because I saw all the stuff you were doing. And I was like, I want to be able to have something else that's fun that people can watch and kind of connect to and get a little background and hear other people talk as opposed to just hearing my voice, barking out in the wilderness. But then also it gives me a chance to be able to reconnect with my friends and go like, hey, so what's up? So I want to say thank you for your inspiring me to do this. Thank you for your ministries, I believe at Hope and New Life Lutheran churches. Indeed, Indiana, Pennsylvania. Look it up. Stephen and I are doing a book tour. The first stop is in Pennsylvania, Indiana. So you're going to want to get your tickets for that. So check the calendar page of the church's websites for more information on that. Also, Stephen's going to be linked in here. If you're not already friends with him on Facebook, going to his page and seeing the blog, his daily thoughts, the podcast that you do. You want to give a shout out to the other two pastors?
Sure. Yeah, I'm grateful for the voices and partnership of Pastor Sarah Ostheim and Erica Wellner. Yeah.
Very, very cool. For everything that your creativity, your happiness, your joie de vivre. I don't even know if I said that right because I don't speak any of the Romance languages. All of that stuff for your ministry as a husband and being a good dad. I know I probably only get the sanitized social media version of your life, but it seems like you're doing pretty well at that. Thank you again for your time and God's blessings during this journey of Lent.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thanks again.